Today I'm going to talk about triads, and it's going to be a mixture of some understanding of triads, some of why they're important, plus some practical, some practice you can do. And without jumping ahead too much, what I'll show you, the thing you can work on, is how you can use triads to join chords together, play chord fills, arpeggios, solos, basically how they help you kind of map out the fretboard and really further your understanding and connect things. So I've said in another video before about triads that we learn guitar basically with a series of disconnected, isolated lessons. So we'll learn chords, we'll learn scales, you'll learn arpeggios as a scale pattern, things like that. And then a lot of people then sit there and say, okay, but now what? How do I use this? How do I join all this together? And triads are a really, really effective way of doing that. The other thing with triads, so I mentioned beginners, I'd recommend it to learn them, but you'll also find intermediate players who can play them or have learned them and what they are, but haven't taken that next step in really understanding why they're so powerful and how to use them. So for me personally, excuse me, triads were really fundamental in learning the notes of the fretboard and being able to play different chord voicings around the neck. So again, if you're a beginner now, or you remember being a beginner and you learn a chord and you'd learn, say, an A chord and you play it here, that doesn't necessarily tell you that you're able to play that chord anywhere on the neck that you want. And how to do it. So I spent a long time when I was younger watching players at gigs or on TV or whatever, and their hands would be down here, they'd be playing chord shapes down here, and I'd be thinking, what are they playing? No one's told me this, no one's shown me this. And often triads are the answer. Triads, obviously, as the name mentions, it's 3 notes, and you can play chords with more notes, but fundamentally, triads really help you do that, as does the cage system and other ways of learning it. I'm not saying this is the only way. But triads are a really, really important component here. So before we move on, the theory part of this that I want to talk about is how they're made up, and that this is how they can help you. So I've got a whole video on how chords are constructed, and I recommend you watch that if you're not sure. But as a very quick recap, a major chord is made up of the 1, 3 and the 5, and a minor chord is made of the 1, the flat 3 and the 5. So if you're not sure what that means, we take the major scale and you take the first note, the third note and the 5th note, and you play those together, and that's a major chord. Or if you flatten that 3, you play it one fret further back, then it's a minor chord. So for example, if we were to play the A major scale, we'll do G major, so the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, same again on the A string, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, on the D string, 4th fret, 5th fret. So if we take the first note, 3rd fret, that's the G, the 3rd note, that's on the 7th fret, just B, then on the 5, that's the 5th fret on the A string, so it's a D. So we've got G, A, D, and that's how you play a G chord. Just those same notes repeated, and that's all chords are. Standard regular chords, not talking about extended chords or anything like that for the time being, but your standard open chords that bar chords. We're talking 3 notes that get repeated. So a triad is just taking those 3 notes and playing the 3 notes. So, and then the reason they help you understand more of the fretboard is, 1, you can play them anywhere. So if you know that you've got the G, anywhere there's a G, you play those 3 notes together. So there's a G here, that's a G triad. There's a G here, G triad. If you know the A chord, and you can move it all the way up here to the 12th fret and play those 3 strings, that's another G triad. So are the 3 open strings, G triad. So you learn the root note, you take a note, you play a triad in that group of 3 strings, and you very quickly can start to learn where the notes of the fretboard are and how to play major chords, minor chords, sus chords and everything. So that's a nutshell. That's a very, very, very quick overview of how they can help you. But assuming that you know what triads are, and maybe you've learned a few by now, in this video I want to show how you can connect them. So as I said before, we learn things in a disconnected way quite a lot of the time. So you learn chords, you learn scales, you might learn arpeggios as scale shapes, and you learn triads, but it's, what do I do with all this? How do I combine all this into music? And I think triads are a really good way of doing that. So if we take a bar chord, we'll do it as a minor, we'll do it as a bar chord in a minor shape. So we'll do the E shape, so you remove the middle finger, and I mean the 5th fret's in an A minor. So this might sound familiar, that for a lot of players, they learn bar chords, and bar chords are great because you can play all over the neck with one shape, maybe 2 shapes if you play on the A string as well. But then you get stuck, and you don't always want 6 strings. And if you remove the top 3 strings and play power chords, it's very bass heavy, and you don't always want that, and there's not really any sort of nuance to these chords. But within this shape, the minor E shape, you've got multiple triads. So the one we'll focus on here is in the middle 3 strings. So remove your index and ring finger, the pinky's here on the D string, and we'll just move the fingers around. So what we're playing is the D string in the 7th fret, and the G and B strings in the 5th fret. Just 3 strings. That's A minor. These 3 notes are in that bar chord, okay? The bar chord is fret 5 on the top 3 strings. Then fret 7 for the D and A strings, and then fret 5 again on the low E. So we remove these 2, and we're just playing these 3 strings. So let's say you're in a 2 guitar band, and the other guitar's playing this, and you're thinking, well, I don't want to play a bit happy or a bit jangly. You can play it here. Then you might want to add to that, right? So it's not just chords. So now we're playing a bit of a chord fill. And we're not moving anywhere. My fingers are moving, but I'm not changing position. So we're playing these 3 notes over. And all I'm doing is adding in a couple notes around it. Now, I said before, because you don't want to just play this hoping it sounds good, right? You want to call on your knowledge. You want to practice this as the actual musical exercise. So I'm not just picking random notes and hoping they sound good. Because I know the triad, I know this is an A minor, I know that this note is my root note, this is the A. I know that going 2 frets along and 1 down, that's the minor 3. That's what makes this a minor chord. And then directly below that is the 5. Right? So you've got the 1, 3, 5. This is a minor 3. And if we made it a major chord, say major, A minor, okay? So what I know, I'm playing in this minor chord, the 1, the minor 3rd, and the 5. Which means the note here, directly under my root note, is a 4. Okay? sus4 chord. so just the middle finger here is what changes this from different chords. If I play here, that's a sus4 chord. If I play it like this, it's a major 3, major chord. Play it as we were before, minor 3, minor chord. And then if I play this 4th fret instead, this is going to require a different fingering. That's a sus2 chord, okay? And this is true for all chords. If we're playing A major here real quickly, just for ease of demonstration, you know the A major, you know the A minor. And you know the only difference is that you're moving the note on the B string down 1. To make it a sus2, you remove that altogether and you play the open B string. And you play a sus4, you play the 3rd string. So, and that's all we're doing up here, we're just moving up here. Okay, so, standard A minor chord. Now I'm playing a chord fill. So I'm just adding in the 4. And then this note here is 2 behind the root, just the minor 7. So hopefully when I talk about numbers like this, they make sense to you. This is what we mean by intervals and scale degrees. If that's not, if that's not familiar to you, definitely learn it. It's so transformative in helping people understand not just how to play the guitar physically, but also the theory side of things, because this is how chords and scales are made up. If you understand, or you rather don't understand, the difference in the major scale, the minor scale, and modes, intervals change all that instantly. So I'd recommend you learn that. But if you do know what I'm talking about here, then you should start to be joining some dots, because by talking about the 4 and the 7, be thinking about scales. To have a minor 7, it's not in the major scale. The major scale has the major 7, which is 1 semitone away from the root. So here I'm playing, so I'm using the minor 7, it's a minor chord, I've got the minor 3. So if you've been practicing your major scales and your minor scales, we're basically playing a scale pattern from the D string. Okay, root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, octave. Okay, so and of course you can just keep building on this, because now you might want to play a longer fill, or you might want to play a solo. Because you know where these are, as in, like I said before, we're not playing random notes, you know what intervals are being chosen, which means if you know that's the 4 and that's the 5, you know the minor 6 is right next to that 5. You know the minor 7 is 2 frets up from that. I just want this to be a quick lesson, and that's the general principle here. How triads can tie things together, because you might have learned scales, right? I'll do the minor pentatonic. You can see we're in the same position as this minor chord, but you learn it in isolation. You learn the pentatonic in isolation, you learn a minor chord in isolation, you learn a bar chord in isolation. Then when it comes time to write your own songs or improvise a solo, or just put some flavour in with the chord fills and things, it's easy to get lost. because none of it makes sense together. And triads tie it together, or rather understanding triads ties it together, because you know those intervals. Root, minor 3, 5. And if you know what's next to them, you know what the intervals are. So you know from the minor 3, you've got the major 3 and the 4. And then we've got the 5 here. So you've got the minor 6, major 6, minor 7, major 7, and the 1, or the octave. And it can join things together. And now we're in the D shape. Same chord, by the way, this is still an A. The root note's now in the middle string. So we're playing on the top 3 strings. And the root note's here on the B string. And you'll recognize this as a D minor shape. So this is how we play A. Okay. So we've changed the order now. So we're now 5 root minor 3. But the same principle applies. That's the minor 3. That's the regular major 3, and then the 4, and you've got the 2 down here. So my advice, if you want to practice on your own, is to identify these triads yourself. So take a bar chord. So I did A minor. You could do the major. You can do it in G. Or you can go on the A string set and do it in C, and you can C minor, C major. And just from there, set yourself a target. What do you want to learn? So maybe do the same thing we went through in this lesson in a different chord shape. So we did A minor. We isolated the triad here. And then we looked at some of the intervals around it. Root, flat 3, 5, meaning that's the 4, that's the flat 7. Do similar in G. It can be a different, you can use a different triad shape. So here, G major, so we use the middle fingers here on the G string, so you can play the top 3 strings as a triad, which means you've got the middle finger here and then index finger, so that just play the top 3 strings. So for G major, it's the 4th fret, 3rd fret, 3rd fret. And in this triad, the G is on the top string. So you've got root note, 5, and the 3. This is the 3, which means to make this a minor chord, you have to move it back 1 note, 1 fret rather. So you just play a line, all 3 in a line. That's G minor. Major, sus4, sus2, so sus2, minor, major, sus4. So this is the root, well that's, you can play the major scale, 1, 2, 3. Or you can start from the 3, 3, 4, 5. So that's the goal here. That's how you use triads to more effectively progress your understanding. Don't just learn them as chord shapes. That's important, that's really important. So you can actually know how to play them around the neck. But learn where the intervals are with them and how those intervals move around based on what string set you're on. Then you'll be able to say, okay, well I want to play a G major. Everywhere you know there's a G. There's one here we just played. There's one here that we played earlier. You obviously got one here, you've got one here. They're all over the place. By knowing the triads, you can say, okay, well I know where there's a G major, or so there's a G note. I want to play a G major. You'll know how to construct it. That's one really, really important part of triads. The second part is how you can use them to then explore your explore into the arpeggios and the scales that you already know. So if you know the major scale or the minor scale or your pentatonic scales, you can just start to fit them in, because you'll know, if you know the formula of a scale. Let's say the major scale has a formula of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, which just means a whole being 2 frets or a whole tone, and a half being 1 fret or a half tone or a semitone. You'd always be able to figure out where you're going, and all these different components that we learn start to slot together. This might take a little while to get if it's brand new information to you and you're very, very early on in learning triads, but if you're a little bit further on, or you know how to play them but aren't sure how to really incorporate them, this is a really effective way. So I would suggest you get a really, really small chord progression, 2, 3, 4 chords, play them as triads around the neck in different voicings, and also try and make up some really simple chord fills without changing your positions. If you're playing a chord progression here, play the fill here like we did. If you play it here, play the fill here. Don't think, oh, I have to go back to position 1 of my pentatonic box because that's all I know. Like, use this opportunity to explore those intervals, make a backing track if you want to, and really just focus in on how that can help you. And have a look for my chord fills video, because it's longer and it's focused on kind of specifically this, more examples, and how you can make your own chord progression and join these chords together with just little really short lead lines incorporating triads and scales. And hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's kind of made some sense of the triads and how to use them, so they're not just some kind of weird mystical thing that pro guitarists use and don't want you to know about. This one secret tip or whatever other bullshit claim is out there about everything these days. Triads are pretty simple. They can seem overwhelming if you knew, because they're everywhere, but actually they're everywhere in kind of repeating patterns. And once you know one, that's it. It's just the same thing over and over again. They just start in a different point. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If this has been helpful, leave a comment. If you've got any criticism, leave a comment, I guess. And good luck. Happy practicing.